Thanks very much, Tim, and thank you for everybody for tuning in and on this Hidden Gems session. ArchTIS stands for Architected Trusted Information Sharing, and we're trusted to safeguard the world's most sensitive information. Now, that's something that isn't something that we aspire to. It's not just it's a claim that we back up every day. Some of the software that we have developed over the years is securing the Australian Department of Defence, the Australian Attorney General's Department. It was used in the Aged Care Royal Commission. So it's something that we are doing constantly. We're already doing that. Next slide, please. ArchTIS has had an amazing journey over the last 18 months and particularly the last 12 months. We've done a number of transformational mergers. We have had extremely great growth in terms of early financial success and validated the market. We've had some marquee global wins from customers, and the products that we are putting into the market, which are niche and have very little competition, have been tried and tested in departments such as defence and intelligence agencies and large multinational global companies. We're very much in the data-centric security technology space. And of course, we have those massive, strong tailwinds of the cybersecurity expenditure on the back of increasing cybersecurity attacks. Next slide, please. I always think that, when you're looking at an strong investment opportunity, particularly in the short, medium term, what you're looking for is market validation, a niche product in the market, huge tailwinds, exponential growth potential globally. But most importantly, what you're really investing in is a team that has done it before. So I'd like to really introduce you to the ArchTIS team. Miles Jakeman, who's on the board, AM, started up Citadel Group and took that to an ASX listing, a $400 million market cap, got taken up by private equity partners. And the most recent valuation of that is it's at $1 billion. Leanne Graham, she worked with the unicorn from New Zealand called Xero Software. I'm sure that most people on the call here understand the size and the success story of Xero. Leanne Graham was the head of their global sales strategy for the Xero pre-IPO and through the IPO and through its great years of growth. Kurt Mufferman, who's joined us through the acquisition of Nuclear Cyber, where ArchTIS acquired the US company, cybersecurity company. We brought in 25 years of technology experience, and he's run $1 billion NASDAQs and the 2 times Fast 500. Our CFO was formerly of Tech One, and we've brought in, again, multiple people with 20 years experience who have achieved dramatic growth in software companies, and particularly in the cybersecurity information access control area. Next slide, please. So that result of the teams and bringing this together just in the last financial year results was an increase in revenue of 740% up to 4.6 million. We had very strong cash on the books at 12.7. Cash receipts were at 7.4 million on the back of some multi-year licensing deals in the Australian Department of Defence. We had just under $2 million in annual recurring revenue. Gross profits were up, EBITDA was down, and gross margins are up. And in fact, on our last quarterly report, they're up at around 71%. So we've got an annual recurring revenue model. It's scaling up. We've invested very heavily in the growth of it, and we look forward to seeing those results over the next 2 quarters. The next slide, please. What's driving the market? Well, the way that we work has changed. We now have this revolution of work from home. We're doing all of these conferences on Zoom. A good indicator of that was pre-pandemic, Microsoft Teams had 65 million daily users. There's now over 120 million daily users of Teams. These technologies were rolled out quickly. The way that we share data is different. We use different applications on the phone, in the enterprise, on our laptops or on our devices. We pick up emails when we're playing with the kids on the iPad. And that this explosion of information outside of the organization and the explosion of the creation of information means traditional defenses just aren't effective anymore. And with that increase in threats by state actors and organized crime, ransomware, we know the ANU was breached, the Parliament House was breached, Austell, Toll, And every day now there is another cybersecurity incident, which are extremely costly and affecting the way that we do business and trust in the digital economy. Next slide, please. What's this driving? It's driving a data-centric security market. Market and Markets predicts that's going to be a $10 billion market by 2024 with compound annual growth rate of 24%. So in the cybersecurity market, we have managed services, we have consulting services, and we have data-centric security, which is a segment of that market. There was $1 trillion of losses last year in cybersecurity losses. That is expected to rise to $6 trillion by 2024, which would make it the third largest GDP in the world. So this is all happening, and it's happening very quickly. So what do? We do dynamic policy enforcement, which is a data-centric security. In other words, instead of building everything into the network, we're building security layers around the asset that is what is sought after, which is the data itself. And we do that specifically for sensitive and classified information. And what we do then is take information about the user, the location, the device, the network, and what data they're trying to access. And we contextualize not only those components, but what information should be released under those risk profiles. So we are automating artificial intelligence for security and access of data, no matter where that travels, inside the organization, outside the organization, enriched by analytics, wherever that goes. And this really is a new paradigm of information security. And that's why it's growing at a compound annual growth rate of 24%. Recently, Joe Biden mandated that for the US federal agencies and asked for a 60-day response plan for implementing zero trust, which is a data-centric security policy. So it's growing very quickly. Next slide, please. We have two products in the market which do this. We have NC Protect, which we acquired in the US, and we also have Cogency. And both of these platforms are very different. NC Protect applies those rules, those contextual access rules, to the entire Microsoft application suite, whether that's in the cloud, i.e. Teams or Office 365 or Azure, or whether that's on-premise. Now, 85% of all businesses use some form of Microsoft product. That's a massive market. Cogency. Cogency, we developed for the Australian Department of Defence back in 2005. It's in its fourth generation. We commercialized that in 2019 and brought it out to the market. It's a completely encapsulated collaboration and sharing platform used for sensitive and classified information. It's accredited by the Australian government. It can also be used on-premise, and in the Australian Department of Defence, it's being used in top secret environments as well as secret environments. That particular platform is targeted at those organisations that are dealing with government that must host classified information and be compliant with Australian government requirements. We're now getting it accredited for the US and the UK, and that'll be expanding over the next 12 months into those markets. Now, that is particularly important for targeting the defence industrial base. And if you're not aware, the Australian government is spending $273 billion over the next 10 years to uplift Australia's defence capabilities. And in that, there's $15 billion just for information security. Any organisation that wishes to participate in that $270 billion capability uplift, with their mum and dad stores in the manufacturing industry or global conglomerates for defence industries such as Thales, Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, then they have to be compliant with that, and we have the industry platform to share that information and give them that accreditation. Moving on. That ability to do that opens us a means for us to secure and expand out of government and into industries with sensitive and regulated data as well, supply chain, manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, and that's where we are expanding and have invested into our sales distribution networks over the last 12 months, and we're seeing great traction there. How are we performing? Next slide, please. Well, we have got a 3-tier distribution network, which is targeting direct sales in government and defence. These are large deals. They take a long time, but they're incredibly sticky. Last September, we secured a $4.2 million deal with the $750,000 worth of licenses in the Australian Department of Defence. We had Cogency in there as well as NC Protect. We cross-sold both of those platforms. We're also targeting enterprises which need to be compliant for privacy, securing intellectual property. That's a smaller size deal. It is rapidly turning over. A good example of that is the large ERP company from Germany, software company, which is global, has just expanded us globally through initially starting in Australia and now has expanded us in Canada, UK, and Europe. So we're expanding our existing client base. And then, of course, we've got the smaller SME market, and we're doing that directly with a Microsoft co-sell arrangement. And Microsoft is taking us into those channels. Next slide, please. We started in December last year. So 12 months ago, we had one FTE salesperson. We now have 12. We have a presence in Boston, London, and Australia. And we have increased our partnership channels by 20. So we don't want to expand that too much. We want to be able to focus on the right partners and make sure that they have opportunities to execute and grow with us, but do have access to the markets that we're targeting. So we have now put in the complete infrastructure to accelerate growth and generate the increasing and rapid annual recurring revenue to make sure that we capture as much of that marketplace as we can. Next slide, please. Microsoft co-sell is important because, and what's important to know about this is effectively we are walking in the door with Microsoft, and Microsoft get quota relief for selling our products. Next slide. Large customer base, big names right across the global territories now. Next slide, thanks. We've been very specific in targeting defence with that $15 billion. We've been very successful. We expect to get more over the next couple of quarters, but we're taking that playbook and expanding that into the US and the UK markets. Next slide. We've been very successful with mergers and acquisitions. We're very targeted. We're not grabbing anything. They have to be culturally aligned, technology aligned, and introduce us into new marketplaces, but also be accretive. And last slide, thanks. So again, proven commercial technology, accredited by the Australian government, global sales networks in place, significant market opportunity in the cybersecurity markets, key strategic partnerships with massive companies, and a strong FY21, which we expect to grow 100% this year in terms of our annual recurring revenue. Thanks. Tim.
Thanks, Daniel. A really impressive story. We've got some shareholders here obviously asking questions, but for those of us who don't know the company that well, why the share price weakness over the last 12 months? I mean, given the big story you're talking here.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things which have affected us in that space. Back about 18 months ago, the Australian government announced that they were spending about $1.6 billion on cybersecurity when we were all notified that state actors were hacking Australian institutions. And I think that there was a very speculative spike in all ASX cybersecurity stocks, which brought great attention, but wasn't really based upon revenue generation. What we have had to do and what we said we'd always do was invest in the infrastructure and expand that global position. We did a recent raise as well. And I think that we've generated enough interest now and pipeline that we can execute over the next following months. I'm not too sure about the softness. I think that there was great expectation. It wasn't met, and so that it softened up a little bit. But I can tell you this, you know, the deal we did with Nuclear Cyber, they came in on a $10 million acquisition and took pure script. And so he's the largest individual shareholders. We have SG Hiscox and others in there, but we're not concerned. We are closest to the business. I'm the second largest individual shareholder in the company, and I have never been more optimistic about the promise of what the business could do. So what would I tell you about the softening? Buy. It's cheap. It is seriously cheap.
Well, there's plenty of cash there, good revenue.
Yeah. So that's what I would be saying. And I think that people are waiting for that J curve growth that we have been predicting, and I think it's around the corner.
And can you give us a little bit more color on your relationship with Microsoft? It's obviously a big name. I would have thought they'd have their own sort of software in place here to provide that sort of protection, or is that you collaborate with them? I mean, I would have thought they'd look to buy you in the future.
Tim, that's an excellent question. So there's a couple of things there, I guess, that's important to note. Microsoft developed products for mass market. Okay, what they don't do then is niche particularly well. But what's happening with the threats of the cybersecurity world is government have been placing increasingly greater security requirements across dealing with their sensitive classified information, and so is industry. What we do is very niche. We provide very particular granular access controls which travel with the data, and they're behind in that in developing anything like that. In fact, when we were introduced to Microsoft, we had to go through 6 different tests to prove that our product didn't upset any of their platforms. And when they saw it, they introduced us directly to Microsoft head office, and they've been walking us through the door in the US to the US Department of Defense and government. We've now been walking through the door in the UK. And this is a bit, for us, it's a bit frightening because, this doesn't often happen. Microsoft, everybody in the world wants to partner with Microsoft. So when they take you under your wing, you've got something special. But at the same time, you need to build up your distribution network to be able to successfully manage the growth and deliver to the expectation, not only of Microsoft, but to the client base. And that's what we've invested in. So we think we're in a very good position now to move forward. If we are successful, yes, why wouldn't you expect a knock on the door? Why wouldn't you expect there'd be, and we have had interest from other parties, but we have never thought that we were in the best interest to return that value back to the shareholders, particularly at this soft price. So again, I'd be buying. So, but